know it's cold out, guys, but it's going to warm up. It's going to warm up. You guys, you ready? I'm just going to. So, thanks for being here today, and I want to thank the Secretary, again, of the Interior, Doug Burgum, for coming up with an entire team, and he'll talk about that in just a moment. But again, if you go to Asia, you generally stop in Alaska because we are the closest state to that part of the world, and Alaska is 60% of the Department of Interior's portfolio. Everything from BLM land to parks to our native folks, oil, gas, minerals, you name it, it's here in Alaska. And so, as you know, we're the only state with an executive order from the President of the United States. That was done on day one. And it's always a pleasure to work with the Secretary because he and his team are focused on executing that executive order for Alaska. And so that's one of the reasons why they stopped there. It wasn't just to get fuel, but to have a conversation about some next steps on some things. And so I'm going to turn it over to the Secretary, but they're going to head to Asia, and he can talk more about that. And then when he's done, I guess we'll take some questions.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Governor, and thank you, the press, for coming out during our stopover. It's always a pleasure to be with Governor Dunleavy. He and I had a chance to know each other and get to know each other when we were both serving as governors. As I was governor of North Dakota, another resource-rich state with less mountains, but the same beautiful weather. But I want to say that it's always great to be back in Alaska. We do have a big trip coming up in May when we got a whole team of people coming back up again here to Alaska, and as the governor said, across a range of important topics from national parks, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Bureau of Land Management. There's lots of nexuses between the federal government and Alaska, and the general theme that we have from the Department of Interior is to follow the law and try to drive decisions that belong in the hands of Alaskans back to the people from Alaska around resource management, land management, et cetera. So we're going to continue to work on following the law and empowering people to achieve their full potential here without the federal government getting in the way. And so that's on that side. But one of the important things that we're stopping by here, of course, relates to energy, and we're on our way to the first ever United States sponsored Indo-Pacific energy security conference. This conference was envisioned months and months ago. At the time it was envisioned, there was not any understanding or expectation that we could have a conflict in the Middle East that would be completely disrupting and creating insecurity in the energy markets. So it turns out that this is as timely as could be. It was originally set to be maxed out with about 400 people attending from over 20 countries. It'll be held in Tokyo in Japan, but it is sold out in the last 10 days. Everybody's clamoring to get into the conference. During the time that we were there, we're going to be talking about how the President Trump's energy dominance agenda, which has been in effect this last year, which is energy dominance is about making sure that we have prosperity at home, meaning affordable low prices for energy for all Americans at home. But it also means that we have enough energy to be able to sell to our friends and allies so they don't have to buy from our adversaries or be threatened by our adversaries in terms of their supply chains. And so that policy more important than ever. And of course, in the last year, the U.S. has become the #1 oil and gas producer in the world, number one LNG exporter in the world. That's been played a tremendous role particularly for our allies in Europe, where we've displaced over 2/3 of their country's consumption of Russian gas, taking dollars away from Russia feeding their war machine. So again, energy security is national security. Energy security is also economic security and economic prosperity. That's why it's a key part of the topic. And of course, Alaska has a huge role to play. Alaska has been in the business, shipping LNG from Alaska uninterrupted. There's no straits, there's no threats, there's no terrorist countries that are blocking it. For 50 years, there's been LNG flowing to our allies uninterrupted in Asia. And when we think about that, Japan, South Korea, or the U.S. territories, we'll be visiting Guam on our return trip. territory like Guam, where we've got large military presence, just like we have large U.S. military presence in Alaska, large military presence in Hawaii. Part of our strategy is to make sure that all of our allies, our territories in the Pacific also have secure energy supplies. Where that energy best come from? It would best come from Alaska. And so again, sustainably, smartly, and in a way that, protects the land, the water, and the wildlife, which we know we can do, developing Alaska's resources to be able to support our territories, our states, and our allies as a way to bring prosperity to all of our citizens, but bring peace to the world, which benefits everybody. That's what this mission is about, and as the governor said, we're pleased to take a few questions.
We're going to start this side and work our way over since there's only a handful of people here. Feel free to go ahead and just remind us your name and who you're with, and then try to keep it to one question.
And let us know who you're going to ask, if it's myself or this.
And before you jump in, I do want to also say thank you to the delegation that we've got here. We do have representatives here, a number of senior leaders from the Department of Energy. We've got the senior leadership from the U.S. Trade Administration, which is helping host and pull together this conference. We've got folks from White House Communications. We've got folks from the Department of Interior, including Insular Affairs, our leader there, that Bill Hague, who manages all of our Pacific territories and partners. And then we've also got folks from the National Security Council on the team, the National Energy Dominance Council, also part of the White House team. So a broad range of folks that are here. Also, we've got the chairman and CEO of XM Bank, which has been a key part of providing funding for that. But so we have a top-notch team all put together to represent the United States, and I want to thank all of them for being on this journey as well. Okay, fire away, sir.
My name is Max Fairman with Northern Journal for Secretary Burgum. I'm going to the Ambler Road. There's been some discussion that the federal government might help out with financing that project, and I was wondering if you could sort of speak to that, what role the administration might have in financing, and how far along those discussions are.
Well, I'd say the discussions are ongoing, but there's a sense of urgency around this. This is the other place where Alaska can play a big role, is related to critical minerals. As we know, last year around the May timeframe, and then again in the fall, China, who controls 85 to 100% of the processing of key critical minerals that we need for all everyday life. If you got here today, if you drove a car here, if you have a cell phone, if you have a TV screen at home, if you have a microwave in your house, I mean, everybody's using critical minerals every day. We need those just for our general economy, but also they're critical to national security and defense. China has systematically developed control over those. Last year they said, we're going to put export controls on all of those. And those export controls essentially gave them a stranglehold over all of the free world's economies. The U.S. Had already been working on that and ahead of time, but after that happened, there was a great sense of urgency that we have to build secure supply chains for both the mining, the refining, the processing, and the end use of those minerals here in the United States. As you know, you're familiar, the Ambler area there's over 1,700 mining claims up there that were unreachable because of no road access. And so with the decision executed by President Trump to finally clear the regulatory hurdles to do that, we think that the financing for the road is actually not going to be that difficult. There's multiple parties that want to participate. It is not going to be an open to the public road. It's designed like some of those that are up in the, I want to say the Red Dog, if I'm getting that right.
No, you got that right.
In the mining area, where you've got a privately controlled road that becomes essentially a toll road, and it's used for industrial purposes, and the people pay a fee. And the U.S. is actively considering whether to participate in financing or maybe even be one of the equity partners in that road itself. And so I don't think that that's going to be an issue. Because the resource there is so rich, I think the road financing will come together, particularly that there's going to be a return, a financial return on that component of the road. I mean, unlike when we build U.S. highways or interstates all over the thing, the money goes out, but there's no revenue that comes back in. This makes it even easier than going to DOT and saying, you know, hey, let's go build a road, and DOT is part of those discussions. But good question, thank you.
Yeah, I'm here, Rosen with the last speaking. This is for the Secretary. When you think of energy dominance, why not renewable energy? Why the hostility to renewable energy, which is extremely important in rural Alaska, that it's had a lot of its projects defunded? And any second thoughts about defunding those projects, or can you explain the position on renewable?
Well, happy to, and I would be, but first of all, if there's, we're looking at things not through ideology, and absolutely there's zero hostility. I mean, I'll just say that that's just not true. There's not a bone of it in my body or in anybody else that's making these decisions that are relative to these projects. But what we are concerned about is three things: reliable, affordable, and secure. And there was massive taxpayer subsidies that were going into projects that were deemed as renewable. They were sold as something that would lower costs. You know, any of the states that have rapidly over-rotated quickly towards intermittent, unreliable, often foreign-sourced sources, and then with a label that was either green or renewable, and some of these projects aren't renewable in that sense. I mean, if you need to use hydrocarbons to build a wind blade, if you've got to heat, you generate 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit of heat to create a solar panel, and then use critical minerals, and all those come from a foreign country. That would both be that there's a lot of non-renewable energy to build the thing in the first place, and quote renewable, and then there's also the idea that you're being dependent on a foreign country for your energy sources. So when we looked at those two things, we said, hey, we're all for affordable, reliable, and secure. We are not going to keep funding with taxpayer money and then have them have to pay for it also at higher rates when they use it for the things that are unreliable, that are foreign sourced, that are intermittent. And when I say intermittent, they're dependent on the weather. I mean, the wind has to blow and the sun has to shine. And I know that there are very specific things related to rural communities in Alaska that don't have access to transmission. And so I believe that we have to look at those at a case-by-case basis because there's no one-size-rule-fits-all. I mean, we were subsidizing solar in America at the same rate in northern Maine as we were in southern Arizona. You got the same tax breaks. But guess what? One of those things is going to be more efficient in terms of production than the other one is. So we had a bunch of, I think, economically crazy rules that caused people to build things because they weren't interested in generating the electrons. They were interested in generating the tax benefits that came from that. And the biggest case for that is offshore wind. I mean, once the tax subsidies went away for offshore wind, there is no one in America trying to build any offshore wind anymore. And it's only because they'll all admit to you, well, we were doing it because we were essentially getting paid to make money doing it, whether the electrons were there or not. And so that has been, I know the president uses words like the Green New Scam, and I think that it's not, people take offense to the word scam, but if something was sold as it's both renewable and it's going to be lower cost, and it turns out to be that it is not renewable in the sense that the maintenance, the oil, I mean, the fiberglass, the blades blowing up, destroying beaches, all the things that were happening in the Northeast, and it's really raised their rates, the highest electric rates in the country, and I'll exclude Alaska because the unique case of large geography, low population, and massive limits on transmission, excluding Alaska, but in the lower 48, the states that pursued those policies are the ones that have the highest rates and the least reliability. During the big winter storm of Fern a few weeks ago, wind and solar contributed. These are just the numbers, not being hostile and not being pejorative and not being idealistic, just the actual numbers. It produced 2% of the energy during that storm, and the country got saved. I mean, the almost 100 million people that lived in that storm area were saved because natural gas could flex up its production by 50%, coal flexed up by 50%, nuclear was very reliable. It produced 11% electricity before the storm, during the storm, and after the storm, but there's no dial on nuclear to crank that up. And so, but wind and solar ended up producing less electricity than wood and trash because we do we do turn trash into power in some of those northeastern cities. In Maine, they burn wood chips. In Vermont, that, a number of homes are still heated by wood. That turned out to be generating more power. And yet, but by the way, we spent more money on wind and solar than any other category. We were shutting down baseload, and subsidizing the stuff that just wasn't there when we needed it. So getting back to just, I call it energy reality, is how, the policies that's driving what we're thinking right now.
I'm Alex Bond with the Anchorage Daily News.
This question needs to be for the governor.
I could pose it to both of you guys. But so what is the federal government and you going to do on this trip in Asia to support the Alaska LNG project to make it happen? And beyond the trip, what is the federal government going to do? Trump had to support Alaska LNG. Trump had talked about a joint venture with Japan about a year ago. I'm wondering where that's at. But what's the federal government going to do to help us make this happen? And then, Governor, you had mentioned a property tax bill to support the Alaska LNG project. When's that coming? And what's that going to be?
Yeah, no, great. So that bill should be next week. Last couple weeks, we've been working with the municipalities on getting their input as to what this should look like before you put the bill out. So look forward to it probably next week on that PILT bill, so that we can look at the economics of this line, and also ways to ensure that the municipalities benefit from this directly. The ancillary benefits are going to be enormous, but look for it next week.
Down to $2 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there'll be it's going to enable discussions with municipalities on a plan in lieu of taxes.
Okay. So not necessarily $2 million, but.
Yeah, and I'm not playing a game, but you'll see the bill when it comes out here next week. After, again, we had meetings yesterday with municipalities, probably have 1 or 2 more meetings, and then get that bill out.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, y'all. We were really up against a tight deadline, so we're going to have to cut it there, but I'll be happy to give you all information if you have follow-up questions to get those answered.
I got a quick short answer. First thing on the what we're doing, we're still in discussions with Japan. Yesterday, Korea passed legislation supporting their $350 million commitment, which is similar to the $550 billion from Japan investing in the U.S., $350 billion from Korea committed to be investing in the U.S. We're in discussions with both of those about potential, how they might play as both off-takers and investors in this. So those things are ongoing, but the federal government through Ex-Im Bank, through the DOE Energy Dominance Loan Fund, through bringing together U.S. companies. There's a lot of U.S. companies are coming to this conference as well. But we will have meetings this week continuing to talk to people about increasing. There's, I think, already 11 on offtake.
You're talking about 1 million tons?
Yeah.
Yeah, 11, and heading towards 16, we hope.
Yeah, 11 million tons of offtake agreements have already signed preliminary agreements, and so we're going to be talking to people this week about more offtake agreements on the pipeline. So it's real, it's moving ahead, and I'd say it's needed more than ever right now in the world because of of what we're seeing. Energy dominance is about energy abundance. Alaska can play a huge role in that, and that's going to be, great for Alaskans, great for America, and great for the world.
What we're seeing is the Iran war that you're talking about, the straight from news.
Yeah, I'm talking about the fact that you can having ability to, reliable, affordable, and then secure, meaning that you don't have to worry about freedom of navigation on your energy sources. That should be a premium that any country in the world will consider paying going forward.
We're the only country on the planet that doesn't have to go through a canal, have to go through straits of any type, or doesn't take 40 days to go around South America. We're 8 days to Tokyo, clear shot, uncontested waters. 7th Fleet patrols the North Pacific. This is really a place for Asia to get its gas, to be honest with you.
It's 13, they got 13 million.
13? Okay, great, thank you. 13 and we're 13 and climbing. We'll try to come home with a bigger number than that. Thank you all. Thank you.